Have you ever noticed that the hobbies you once adored suddenly feel flat, meaningless, or even irritating? Perhaps gaming no longer excites you, painting feels like a chore, or music that once stirred your soul now sounds like background noise. For many people undergoing spiritual awakening or deep psychological transformation, this loss of passion feels alarming. It's as if the very things that once gave life texture and color have turned to dust. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and pioneer of analytical psychology, anticipated this strange yet profound phenomenon. His insights into the ego, the persona, the shadow, and the process of individuation shed light on why awakening disrupts your relationship with hobbies, and why this disruption is not the end, but the beginning of something far deeper. In this article, we'll explore Jung's perspective on awakening, why old passions fade, and how this loss is really a reordering of the psyche that clears space for more authentic, soul-aligned forms of creativity and joy. The shock of awakening. Why hobbies lose their magic. When people first awaken, whether through inner work, meditation, psychedelics, or simply the inevitable turning points of life, they often expect bliss, clarity, and freedom. And yes, awakening can bring these gifts. But Jung warned that awakening is not only about love and light, it is also a dismantling. One of the first signs of this dismantling is the sudden loss of interest in hobbies. The passions that once defined you, gaming, art, music, sports, shopping, begin to feel hollow. What was once joyful now feels like dust in your mouth. This is not because you've become lazy or broken. It's because your psyche is shifting at its very foundations. Hobbies as ego food. Before awakening, hobbies often serve as extensions of the ego. Jung described the persona as the mask we wear in the world, the social identity we craft to function and belong. Hobbies frequently become part of this mask. Think about it. The gamer is admired for skill and competitiveness. The artist gains recognition through creativity. The athlete earns status through discipline and strength. The musician gathers admiration by expressing emotion through sound. In each case, the hobby reinforces a sense of identity, achievement, and belonging. It feeds the ego's desire to be seen, validated, and significant. That's why hobbies feel so exciting in the ego-driven stage of life. They aren't just about enjoyment. They are ways of proving your worth, gaining social points, or distracting yourself from deeper struggles. But when awakening occurs, this scaffolding begins to crumble. The old motivations no longer work. Winning a game, posting a painting online, or buying new clothes doesn't provide the same rush because the part of you that cared so much, the egoic identity, has started dissolving. The collapse of old values. As the persona weakens, the entire value system tied to it collapses. Recognition, productivity, achievement, and status, once your sources of joy, begin to feel like chasing smoke. This collapse can feel terrifying. Without the old motivations, life appears flat, even meaningless. Jung compared this stage to a death, the death of old meaning structures. Music feels like noise. Painting feels forced. Shopping feels pointless. Gaming feels repetitive. But Jung also insisted this collapse is purposeful. When outer-driven pleasures lose their magic, the psyche is redirecting its energy inward, toward the self, the deeper, authentic core of your being, the shadow revealed. Another key reason hobbies lose their spark is because many of them were never just hobbies in the first place. They were coping mechanisms. Maybe you painted to escape loneliness. Maybe you gamed to silence anxiety. Maybe you sang to feel noticed in a world that overlooked you. On the surface, these look like passions. Underneath, they were band-aids covering wounds. Jung called this hidden realm of repressed fears, emotions, and unmet needs the shadow. Awakening brings the shadow into the light. Suddenly, the distraction no longer works. Painting doesn't soothe loneliness. Gaming doesn't mask anxiety. Shopping doesn't quiet the sense of unworthiness. The coping mechanism fails because the mask has fallen. This confrontation with the shadow is deeply uncomfortable. Instead of hiding behind endless activity, you are forced to sit with your fears, grief, and emptiness. Yet this stage, though painful, is profoundly healing. It allows you to integrate what was hidden, to face the very wounds that hobbies were keeping at bay. The dark night of the soul. The loss of hobbies often ushers in what mystics call the dark night of the soul, a stage where old meanings dissolve and nothing feels alive. Jung described this in alchemical terms as the nigredo, or blackening, the burning away of what no longer serves. At first, this feels like despair. You wake up, and the world feels drained of color. Life itself seems stripped of purpose. But the dark night is not mere despair. It is a sacred transition, a liminal space between the death of the old self and the birth of the new. You can't force yourself back into old hobbies or reattach the mask of the persona. The only way through is to surrender to the process, to let the psyche do its alchemical work. Rediscovering authentic joy. Though the void feels endless, Jung believed it has a clear purpose: to strip away false motivations so that authentic creativity can emerge. When the ego's grip loosens, new passions eventually sprout, not as escapes or performances, but as genuine expressions of the self. These new or renewed hobbies are no longer about achievement, status, or validation. They are about being. Painting may return, not to show off talent, but as a form of meditation. Music may flow back, not to prove worth, but to express soul. New activities like gardening, walking in nature, or journaling may appear, simple, nourishing expressions of life. This shift marks the beginning of individuation, the process Jung described as becoming your whole true self. It's the movement from doing to achieve toward doing to be. Activities are no longer tied to proving yourself. They are expressions of your essence. Practical guidance for navigating the void. So what should you do if you find yourself in this bewildering space where your old hobbies feel lifeless? Jung's teachings suggest a few guiding principles. 1. Be patient with the void. Don't rush to revive old passions. Allow the emptiness to unfold. It is part of the process. 2. Experiment with new forms of expression. Try journaling, walking in nature, silence, or unfamiliar art forms. Approach them with openness, not expectation. 3. Observe your shadow. Ask yourself, was this hobby feeding my soul or feeding my persona? This question alone can shift your perspective. 4. Trust individuation. Something new will emerge, but only after you've released what no longer serves. 5. Connect with others on the path. Remember, you're not alone. Many who awaken pass through the same disorienting stage of emptiness. Sharing your experience can bring comfort and insight. The liberation behind the loss. It's tempting to see the loss of hobbies as a personal failure, a sign that you're broken or apathetic. But Jung saw it differently. This is not loss. It is liberation. By dismantling the ego's scaffolding, awakening frees you from the endless cycle of seeking validation, achievement, and identity through external activities. What feels like emptiness is actually the clearing of the field, the fallow season that makes space for authentic growth. Yes, there is grief in this process. It feels like losing part of yourself, because in truth, you are losing part of yourself, the persona, the old mask. But what dies is illusion. What remains is real. In the end, the fading of old hobbies is not the end of joy. It is the stripping away of counterfeit joys to make room for soul-aligned passions. When individuation takes root, your creativity returns not as performance, but as pure expression. And in that shift, you discover a deeper, more enduring source of fulfillment, one that arises not from doing, but from being. Conclusion. Losing interest in hobbies after awakening is one of the strangest, most unsettling stages of the spiritual journey. Yet Carl Jung's psychology reveals it as a natural, even necessary part of individuation. Hobbies tied to ego and persona fade because the psyche is reordering itself. Coping mechanisms collapse because the shadow demands recognition. The dark night arrives to dissolve old meanings. But through this dismantling, the self is born. When authentic creativity returns, it no longer feeds the ego. It nourishes the soul. And that is the true gift of awakening, the freedom to live, create, and express from the deepest part of who you are. So if you are in this stage now, confused by the loss of what once thrilled you, take heart. You are not broken. You are being remade.